Hey folks, Cup of Thumb here. If you're new to 3D printing and 3D modeling and you want to print something awesome at home, you're in the right place. In this beginner-friendly tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a deck box with a sliding top lid for your favorite deck. You can customize the size to be whatever size you like. So once you've done this, you can make them for all your different card games. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive right into the tutorial. Okay folks, so as always, let's fire up Blender and be met with our old friend, the default cube. Now, before we do anything, I want you to hit into edit mode and go to the top of your screen where you'll see these little four boxes all connected together. This is called mesh edit mode. The reason I want this is if we click on it, we can go down to measurement, and now this will show us the edge lengths of our cube. So scroll on the middle wheel to zoom in. You'll see here that it says 2 meters on each of the edges. If we were to print this, it would be huge. Unless you have an industry-sized enormous printer, you're probably not going to be able to print this. So we need to be working in measurements that make a little bit more sense for 3D printers. So centimeters rather than meters. We can do this by going to the side panel here, the tool panel, and going down to scene properties. Scene is the little cone, the little circle, and the little sphere there. Click on that, and we're going to go to units. So these are all of our units of measurement. Open that up by clicking on the little chevron, and we're going to go down to length and change it from meters to centimeters. Now you'll see here that all the edge lengths change to 200 centimeters. Centimeters is a much better unit for us to work in for 3D printing. And as with 3D printing, the measurements of things are going to be really important for the things that we build. Now, if you don't want to have to do that every time you open Blender, you can go to File, Defaults here, and then hit Save Startup File, and now that will save that for you. So every time you open Blender, those measurements will be locked in your units, so you're good to go for any sort of 3D printing. If for any reason you're like, oh no, I've saved too many weird settings and I don't want it this way anymore, you can just change it back to Load Factory Settings, Save Startup File, and then you'll be right back to just our friend, the default cube. Yeah, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change this cube to the dimensions of what our deck is. So our stack of cards without the deck box, because we're going to build the deck box around that using this as a basic template for it. So I know that my Commander deck box, 100 cards, double sleeved, is 10.5 centimeters by 8 by 7.5 centimeters, which gives it a little bit of wiggle room. So I'm going to start by scaling this down to that. So I'm just going to scale the whole thing down, and then zoom in, middle mouse button, S to scale again, all the way down, middle mouse button, S to scale to 10.5. So now it's a 10.5 cube. So now I'm going to scale on the y-axis, and I am going to bring this down to 8.5. Or, yeah, close enough, 8.52, close enough. Then I'm going to scale this on the Z to 7.5. There we go. So this is the size of my deck ready to build cards, ready to build the deck box around. So great. Once you're at this stage with the dimensions of whatever the size of your deck is, then we will then we'll take it from there and start building the deck box. Excellent. Now, if you're already scratching your head and saying, wait, scaling on the Y, zooming in with the scroll middle, what does any of this mean? You might want to start with my very basics tutorial. It's not very long, and it will cover all of the things that I am dealing with right now and that you will be dealing with in this tutorial. This is very beginner friendly, and I will be showing everything that I'm doing. But if you want a really quick crash course on some of the basics and foundational knowledge, I really recommend you checking that out. If you feel like you're sticking with me and you're understanding what's going on, then let's move on to the next part. Great. So in the next phase, we are now going to start building the exterior for our deck box. We have right here our deck. So if you see here up in our scene, we have a camera and a light. We can ignore those because we're doing this for 3D printing, not for animation. I am going to rename this, not cube. I'm going to rename this as deck because that is the size of our deck of cards. So now what I can do is I can hit Shift D and it will duplicate that. And if you click the mouse button, it will duplicate it in exactly the same place, which is what we want. Now, if you see, if I put Shift D, I can move it around and duplicate it somewhere else with the mouse button. So you have to hit Shift D and then click the mouse to remain in place. I'm just going to Control Z and undo that because we don't need that. Now up here, you'll see that we have the deck and deck 0.001 because we've copied it. Now I'm going to rename this. Renaming and naming conventions is really important just for your own sanity in Blender. It turns out you can just keep duplicating and copying and adding, and if you don't stay on top of that, it can get real hairy real quick. So we're going to name this deck box because this build is only going to have two parts, our deck box and our deck box lid. So now that we have our deck box, what we're going to do is we're going to click on it, make sure it's highlighted. And then if you click on it, you'll see that it might jump back to deck because these two things are exactly on top of each other. They're occupying the same space because we duplicated it in exactly the same space. So what we're going to do is make sure deck box is highlighted and go to edit mode and then hit 3 on the numbers to take it to face select and hit the top face. Then we are going to hit X to delete, and we're going to delete faces. So now we have, it looks like nothing's changed, and that's because we have our deck and our deck box in the same place, one with the face deleted. So if you go into the scene and select the deck and get rid of the, you can hide it in the viewport, you will see that we're now left with what looks kind of like the beginnings of a deck box. Excellent. Now, the issue with this is it has no thickness. This, if we tried to print this, it wouldn't work because they are just single, infinitely small panels. There's no real dimensions or width to the actual faces of this, but we can rectify that pretty quickly. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to scale this because this is going to be the deck box that fits around our deck. So if we go here and we select everything and we hit scale, we're going to scale it by 1.03 just to increase it by 3% in all directions. And then if we now select our deck, if you zoom in, you'll see that there's kind of an edge all around it. How cool is that? So if you know what we did there, we basically scaled our original cube up by 3% in all directions. So our deck basically will sit in it with a little bit of tolerance there. So there's a little bit of wiggle room. Now, it still doesn't have any thickness. It's still just thin planes. So to solve that, what we're going to do is use a modifier. And we're going to use the Solidify modifier, which basically, as it sounds, solidifies it, adds some extra thickness to it, essentially. So if you go down here to this little wrench, this is our modifiers tab. If we click on that and then click add modifier and go down to generate, you'll see here there are a ton of different modifiers. We are going to go down to Solidify. And now you'll see as soon as we turn it on, it's now making it look kind of like a deck box. That's pretty cool. It's just added some thickness. Now, this has added internal thickness as a default. You'll see here the offset is -1 and the thickness is 1 centimeter. All of that is too much. So we're going to flip it by just dragging on offset to 1. So now if you kind of do that, you'll see that it's kind of picking which side it wants to go. So we're going to do that on the exterior, and we're going to bring the thickness down. Actually, we can just do 0.3. There you go, because 3 millimeters is going to be perfect for 3D printing. It'll be a thick enough deck box. Actually, scrap that. We're going to make it easier on ourselves. We're going to, not 0.36. We're going to do 0.6. Much better, much better. Okay, cool. Now, and we're going to change that to even thickness there. Oh, there we go. That's better. So now we have a pretty solid looking deck box start. Now, in the next part, we're going to figure out how do we add a lid to this. Now, if we were to export this, we could absolutely 3D print this. And if we bring our deck back here, you'll see that it fits in there neatly. So if you just wanted to stop here, you could just print a very basic box and put whatever you like in it. But this is pretty much ready to go once we export it with the right settings. But we want to put a nice kind of sliding lock lid on here. So let's do that now. Okay, folks. So the next thing I want you to do really quickly is go to File, Save As, and then save your file. As you can see here, I've already saved this. So mine is just going to be deckbox.blend, which is the file type for a blend file. So just hit save and save that here. So we've got our work saved. Okay, great. Now, the next thing we need to do to this is add in a rail on the top that will allow our lid to slide into it. So I'm thinking something that's going to come up slightly and then bend in, so our lid will be able to sit into that. So how will we approach that? Well, the first thing we're going to do, go into edit mode, and we need to take a look at our deck box. Right now, we have this modifier in, but we can't manipulate any of this external geometry because it's all being powered by the modifier. If you see here, I can only select these inside faces. If I move our deck out of the way, you can see I can only select these inside faces. All of the thickness is controlled by the modifier. So to be able to alter that, I will need to apply the modifier. So go back to object mode, and then this little chevron in the modifier panel down here, we're going to apply. Now, a rule of thumb is you don't want to apply any of your modifiers until the very last moment because it means we can no longer modify it once they're applied. But in this instance, we actually need to be able to work with that additional geometry. So we are going to apply that. Now, when we go to edit mode, you'll see that we have all of these faces that we can play with and alter, which is great. So to build our rails on the top, to have a lid sliding on here, what we need to do is add in a loop cut. So if you hit Control R, it brings up the loop cut tool, and this allows us to create, it follows a path all the way around our geometry in different spaces to add in some extra lines there. So we're going to do that around the top here. You want to click and then click again to set it. We only want to add in one loop cut. If you want to add more loop cuts, you can scroll on the scroll wheel, but for this instance, we just need one loop cut. Now, I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to click, I'm going to hit 3 and go into Face Select. Then I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to hit this face, and this face, and then I am going to hit E to extrude this geometry up just a little bit. And now you can see we've kind of created this groove here where a lid could sit into. Now, the lid would be able to pop off the top because there's nothing holding it on. And that's where we're going to create a bit of an overhang leaning in to lock our lid in place. So to do that, we're just going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to extrude again, and we're just going to raise the mouse up just to add in a little extra there. And then we're going to hit 2 to go to edge select. I'm going to hit this edge, and you can, remember to click in the mouse wheel and scroll to scroll around. Hold in Shift to select more edges. We're going to hit that edge, scroll around here, and we're going to hit this edge, these 3 internal edges. Now, I am going to scale these, but I don't want to scale them on the Z-axis. So I'm going to hit S, and then I'm going to hit scale. So I'm going to hit S to scale, and then I'm going to hit Shift Z, which means it will scale on the X and Y axes, but not the Z axes. I basically don't want it to move up and down, but I do want it to be able to scale, left and right, or on the X and Y. So we're just going to bring this in just a little bit to create this nice little overhang, but not too much of an overhang. So now you can see we have these rails on the top that our lid will be able to slide right into, which is perfect. And it won't pop off the top. So that is fantastic. Now, as we're designing these models with principles that we're thinking about 3D printing all the time. Now, 3D printing means that this is going to print layer by layer by layer by layer. So if you have 2 big overhangs, like over here, if I was to grab this here and grab it on the Y and bring it all the way over here, if this tried to 3D print, it would struggle because as it's printing layer by layer by layer, the overhang is so much that there's nothing really for it to rest on. So it could end up sagging or having deformations or not really printing well. And at that point, we'd have to add in supports that are basically bits of PLA or bits of the model that we can just break off and throw away that we would have to print to allow this to, rest on to print properly. Now, we try and avoid this at all costs, just because we don't if we can use design principles to avoid this, we're going to end up with much neater designs. So I'm just going to hit Control Z. So I've just done a little overhang, which means that our lid won't be able to pop off, and it will still be very structurally sound as this as we build up our as this 3D print. So yeah, that is it for the moment. We have the bottom of our deck box complete. Now there's just the lid. So let's move on to that part right now. Okay, folks, I know what you're thinking. This is a really beautiful looking dead box, but how on earth are we going to make such a complex lid shape in a beginner tutorial? Well, I'm happy to tell you, it's actually going to be a lot simpler than what you think, and it's going to be using tools we've just done right at the beginning. So rather than overcomplicate things for ourselves, what we can do is if we look at the inner part of this, we actually already have the shape of the lid within sort of the faces that we've already made. So what we can do here is just do some duplication and take the parts that we need. So let's do that right now. So let's hold Shift A and select, hit 3 to go to face select. Make sure you're in face select, and then hit Shift, and then let's start selecting parts of this geometry. So we basically want to select all of these inside parts here, and then this, and then this. And now we can, once all that is selected, you see here, all of those inside parts, we're going to hit Shift D, and then we're going to click, and now that has duplicated that geometry in exactly the same place. Now, nothing's moved, so it doesn't look like anything has happened, but what we can do now is we can separate out that part that we've selected. So to separate by parts into a new part, you're going to hit P, and then that will bring up the separate menu. Now, what we want to do is to separate by selection, because we've selected it, we've duplicated it, and now we're going to separate that out. If you hit P, you'll see now up here, it says deckbox.001, and you can see these sort of orange outlines. Now, what we need to do is go into object mode, and then click off here, and then click that part there. And then if you want, you can see right here that if we hit the I to hide the deck box, you can see what we duplicated is looking almost exactly like the majority of the lid shape that we need, which is pretty sweet, right? So what we can do now is if we go into edit mode with all of that lid part selected, we can hit, if we select one of these edges, and then if you hit the hotkey F, it will create a face in the most obvious path that it can find. So if I hit F now, it's going to fill in this whole bottom face. Now, another way to do that, if you hit Control Z, you could also shift and select all of those edges, and then hit F, and that will also create the face. Now, for the top part, if we hit 2 and then select this edge, and then we hit F, it's going to create a face all the way across. Now, the cool thing is, if we hit F again, it's going to create another face, then F again, another face, and then F again, and we now have our lid complete. Isn't that amazing? So if we now unhide the deck box, we have a deck box and a lid looking really, really neat. Okay, you may be thinking, we're done. That's it. The deck box, right? It's complete. We have the deck box, we have the lid. And although this is really awesome, it's not quite there, because while we're thinking of 3D printing, we have to think of our tolerances. Our tolerances are basically the space between the objects. Now, this lid is the exact same size as the opening of which we duplicated it from, which means if we tried to 3D print this and like slide it together, it would be too thick and it just wouldn't fit. So what we're going to have to do is just shrink our lid down a little bit so it will fit within the space we've created. Now, we can do that really easily just by selecting the lid, by clicking on it, and then hitting S to scale and going 0.99. So now it's going to be 99% of its original size, which will add in just some extra space around all the sizes, which means this lid should slide in nicely. Now, You may need to play around with this a little bit for your deck box depending on the dimensions, but altering this and 3D printing it, seeing how it looks, and then tweaking it is part of 3D printing and part of the game. Now, this one will work, I know, because I've done it before, so I can say if you've followed my dimensions, this one will be tried and true. But part of 3D printing and part of the fun is working out those tolerances and working out those different gaps. Now, you can obviously change the shape of this in other ways. You could hit scale on the y-axis and really like move it around. You could reactivate the tool that if you wanted to get really precise, the one we used before, and the different edge lengths, and to look at those different edge lengths, you know, to really dial it in. But for now, we're just going to work with what we have here and get this ready. Well, this is ready for 3D printing. So congratulations, you have designed your own deck box, fully custom to you. Give yourself a pat on the back. This is a beginner tutorial, but you've created something amazing. And in the next part, I'm going to show you how to export this for 3D printing. Okay, folks, the very last part is exporting this model as STLs. STLs are the files that our slicer software will read and convert that into the code the printers need to do the printing. So there are loads of different slicing softwares out there. I use Bamboo Studio because I have Bamboo printers, but they all pretty much do the same thing, but in different ways and with a different sort of UI interface. But they're all going to take STLs. So the way we can save these as STLs, it's super, super simple, is I'm going to hide the lid for now, and I'm going to select the deck box, and you go to File, Export, STL, and then in this menu, you can see I've already saved these before, but save it as whatever you want. I'm doing this as deck box bottom V1. I do this because when I'm sort of iterating, I'm going to end up with a bunch of different versions, and I want to know which one I'm at. And in the side menu here in general, make sure selection only is selected and apply modifiers is selected. Now, apply modifiers doesn't matter because we don't have any modifiers to apply, but for other models, you may, and it's good to be able to apply those all right at the end. Now, if I hit export STL, it's then going to export that and save it. And you do the exact same process for the lid. Select it, file, export, STL, deck box lid V1, selection only, apply modifiers, and then export STL. And now you have two individual STLs that you can load into your slicer software, and they will print on your 3D printers. And at that point, you will have your very own deck box. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Okay, the very last thing to do is print these files, and let's see how our deck box is looking. And here we have it, folks, fresh off the print bed, looking incredible. I've already added my deck into here, and I am so excited. Doesn't this look fantastic? Yeah, well done. Your first beginner tutorial complete, and you now have something incredible that you can show off. Take to your LGS, put it on your bookshelf. It's looking great. From here, I'm going to do more advanced tutorials on how we can modify these to create even more advanced looking deck boxes, like my Phyrexian deck box, for example. And we can keep playing around and learning all sorts of new stuff. So if you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. My name is Copper Thumb. I am a 3D artist, and I really love making these tutorials. Your support would mean the world. So yeah, let's keep creating some awesome stuff together. I really appreciate you being here. See you later.